Okay, so we're going to move now to chapter 4. This chapter is titled Forms and Dispositions. In general here I would recommend looking at the commentary. Our translator Menford gives some good reasons for why he translates things the way that he does, and a little bit of background for some of the words, which I think is helpful. It's also useful in that the commentators throughout time often give very different interpretations of what Sun Tzu is saying, and so although in general I think you can come up with an idea of what he means, it's great to sort of hear what other people say. They might be very, very different from your own, and so I think that's useful in itself. Okay, so let's look at this first stanza we have here. Of old, the skillful warrior first ensured his own invulnerability, and then he waited for the enemy's vulnerability. And Menford makes a note in the back that this word he's translating vulnerability and invulnerability could also be breakability or unbreakability. But let's begin with some interpretations here. So one way of putting it is to say that by establishing yourself as yang, you force your opponent to take on the yin stance or disposition. If we look ahead really quickly at chapter 6, the empty and the full, this is on page 31, it begins, Master Sun says, first on the battlefield waits for the enemy fresh. Last on the battlefield charges into the fray exhausted. So if you get there first, if you sort of set yourself up, then you already have a strong position, and then the other army has to sort of arrange himself around you. So invulnerability or unbreakability has to do with taking a position or a stance that is on the one hand strong, and next that is also unpredictable. As soon as you begin moving out of this strong, unpredictable stance, then you dissolve the strength and you run the risk that what you want to do starts to become legible to your enemy. I believe that's part of what's going on here. Let's read forward a little bit. So invulnerability rests with self, vulnerability with the enemy. And then he says, the skillful warrior can achieve his own invulnerability, but he can never bring about the enemy's vulnerability. Hence the saying, one can know victory and not achieve it. So at least one point here is that you can achieve your own invulnerability, but you can't make your enemy vulnerable. And this is knowing victory, so you can know how you will win as soon as your enemy opens himself up and makes himself vulnerable, but not being able to achieve it. To put it in a little bit different words, you can lead a horse to poison water, but you can't make him drink it. Next, so moving on, he says, invulnerability is defense, vulnerability is attack, and then he says, defense implies lack, attack implies abundance. Okay, so let's look at that for 1 second. If we look back on page 151, I think that this gives two interesting interpretations of this. This is the middle of page 151 where it says, vulnerability is attack. One commentator says, if the enemy attacks me, then he becomes vulnerable. So in this sense, the vulnerability comes through the act of attacking, right? So if we're in this little fighting situation and I go to punch you, then something about my trying to punch you opens me up, to be attacked from different angles. Probably in a fight I wouldn't do that to myself, but I don't know, I'm a weird guy. The second comment is from Dumu. Once the enemy reveals a vulnerable disposition, go out and attack him. So this is a different sort of understanding. It's saying that if there is vulnerability, then you should attack, right? So if I have a fighting stance like this for some reason, then you can just hit me as much as you want right here because this is sort of open and ready to be attacked. It's my vulnerable point. Okay, I'd like to skip a little bit, going to page 22, where Sun Tzu writes, the skillful warrior of old won easy victories. The victories of the skillful warrior are not extraordinary victories. They bring neither fame for wisdom, nor merit for valor. His victories are flawless. His victory is flawless because it is inevitable. He vanquishes an already defeated enemy. So this is a little bit curious. So what's the big deal? I mean, I could beat an already vanquished enemy without much problem, right? We might be thinking. But let's get into this a little bit. Again, I think that Minford gives some useful commentary. He sort of relates this to Taoist thought around page 154 and following, and so I think that's worth looking at. Just to sort of riff off what he's saying a little bit. The skillful warrior is almost like the sort of Taoist master. He's constantly using the permutations of yin and yang, how yin goes into yang and yang goes into yin, and he's always using this to his advantage. And if we look at the word choice that he's using here, it's pretty telling. He says it's easy, it's flawless, it's inevitable, and already defeated enemy. So we could maybe add to that the idea of being unnoticeable or non-newsworthy. There's something about the way that this skillful warrior is doing what he does, which shows that he has the Tao, and this is what, when Minford in his introductions, he says that the Tao could be understood as a sort of a knack or a skill. This is just the skillful warrior kind of doing his thing, working with all of these different situations in order to accomplish his will. He's the master of both sides of the spectrum, of yin and yang, and he can change yin into yang and yang into yin. So why isn't that remarkable? I wanted to give an example of water, and this metaphor comes up later in the Art of War. So if we think about a tsunami, it's an enormously destructive force, and it has this ability to destroy everything in its path. So water can fill up every room, every corner. It goes in between cracks. It finds the empty and fills it with its very destructive force. It goes from higher to lower, and it's going to return to the sea. So it's going to go whence it came again, or it's going to go under the earth where it can't be seen at all. Sorry. And no one says, well, isn't that great of the water to do that? Wasn't that so smart how the water sort of was able to rout out its enemy? It's just water being water. It's water being what it does. And in some ways, Sun Tzu is saying that the skillful soldier is doing the same sort of thing. He's just sort of taking these whole situations and moving with a sort of a flow, with a sense of inevitability, and he's just doing what he does, and it's not questionable at all, and it's not really remarkable. It's just has a sense of necessity. And again, skipping ahead just a little bit, we read, the skillful strategist cultivates the way and preserves the law. He is the master of victory and defeat. Here again, I think there's an interesting commentary, a comment on page 151. This is by Du Mu. He says, the way is the way of compassion and righteousness. The law is the sum of the rules of military organization. So again, I'm going to have a little bit of a question about just how compassionate and righteous Sun Tzu is, and how much he's sort of encouraging these skillful strategists to be that way. The skillful strategist wins wars. Part of what makes him good at doing that is defeating people at their weakest points, and in such a way that they didn't have a chance to fight. At least that's how I understand Sun Tzu, what he's trying to advise us for an art of war. So exactly how compassionate and righteous that is, well, the commentators put their word in, but I'm sort of tugging towards the other side. And just in case you don't believe me, let's look at the final stanzas of this chapter. A victorious army is like a pound of weight in the scales against a grain. A defeated army is like a grain in the scale against a pound of weight. A victorious army is like pent-up water. Like pent-up water crashing 1,000 fathoms into a gorge. All this is a matter of forms and dispositions. So this is the forms and dispositions. This is Sun Tzu's Tao. Whether this is our compassionate Tao or not, I'll let you be the judge.